all of them stayed away from Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra even when it passed through Uttar Pradesh. And later, at the conclusion of the yatra in Srinagar in January of this year, most opposition parties did not show up despite being invited. All through February and March, the TMC skipped multiple meetings of opposition parties on firming up a parliamentary strategy to corner the government on the Adani issue. But now, Rahul Gandhi's disqualification has managed to, at least in the last few days, unite the opposition around this one issue. Even staunch critics of the Congress, Mamata Banerjee, Arvind Kejriwal, Chandrasekhar Rao and Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan have all either spoken or tweeted or released statements condemning the disqualification of Rahul Gandhi as an MP. But there are a few who still have not said anything. That includes BSP Chief Mayawati, who has stayed silent. Naveen Patnaik, Nitish Kumar and Jagan Mohan Reddy have all so far refrained from comment. While Rahul Gandhi's disqualification has helped the Congress try and bridge the gap somewhat with the TMC, AAP and BRS, fresh tensions have erupted within the alliance in Maharashtra, particularly with the Uddhav Thackeray faction of the Shiv Sena. Over the weekend, Rahul Gandhi declared that since his name is not Savarkar, he will not apologize for what he said. Shiv Sena UBT President Uddhav Thackeray has warned Rahul Gandhi against insulting Savarkar, saying that he and his party will not tolerate it. In fact, the Uddhav Thackeray faction skipped the dinner meet called by Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge today. Even the BJP criticized Rahul Gandhi for calling Savarkar an apologist of the British.
राहुल गांधी सोचता है मेरा नाम सावरकर नहीं है, मेरा नाम गांधी है। गांधी किसी से माफी नहीं मांगता। और मैंने कहा, पार्लियामेंट हाउस में कहा कि भैया मुझे बोलने दीजिए ना, एक बार तो बोलने दीजिए।
राहुल गांधी सावरकर कभी हो नहीं सकते। सावरकर जी कभी 6 महीने विदेश में घूमने फिरने नहीं जाते थे। हर सेशन के बाद उनको विदेश की यात्रा की छुट्टी नहीं चाहिए थी। वो समर्पित थे देश की आजादी के लिए, जेल से ही 14 सालों तक। राहुल जी, सावरकर जी का अपमान तो आपने किया ही। अरे वीर सावरकर तो राहुल गांधी कभी नहीं हो सकते, लेकिन अपनी दादी में भारत की पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री इंदिरा गांधी जी की इज्जत तो बचा लेते, नेहरू जी की इज्जत तो बचा लेते। क्या आपने उनको भी अपमानित साथ साथ कर दिया?
अंडमान में काला पानी में रहना 14 साल तक ये आसान नहीं है, और अब वो व्यक्ति जिंदा नहीं है अपनी बात रखने के लिए। सावरकर जी अगर जिंदा होते तो अपनी बात रख पाते। तो ऐसे व्यक्ति के ऊपर, ऐसे महान क्रांतिकारी के ऊपर आप इस प्रकार से कीचड़ उछालेंगे तो महाराष्ट्र की जनता बहुत ही आपको करारा जवाब दे सकती है।
Meanwhile, that's not all. The BJP and the Shinde faction of the Shiv Sena are adding fuel to fire. MPs from Maharashtra protested in front of the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj statue in Parliament today against the comments that Rahul Gandhi made on Savarkar. They also held placards and raised slogans condemning the remarks. Meanwhile, in Maharashtra, Chief Minister Eknath Shinde has said that Rahul Gandhi will be punished for defaming Savarkar. The Maharashtra government will be holding a Savarkar Gaurav Yatra from tomorrow to celebrate his contributions to India's freedom movement. Okay, let me open this up to our panelists. R.P. Singh of the BJP is now joining us. M.K. Vishnu Prasad, Congress MP, Professor Saugata Roy, TMC MP, Ratan Sharda, RSS thinker and researcher, and Professor Sanjay Kumar is a psephologist and political analyst. Let me start with you, R.P. Singh. The Congress is saying, you know, all the actions that have been taken against Rahul Gandhi, whether it is the disqualification and subsequent response to protest today, is all sort of affirming their point. It's proving their point that there is a democratic backslide in India, institutions are under threat, judiciary is captured, press is captured, so on and so forth. Why isn't the government doing anything to, you know, prove Rahul Gandhi wrong?
Zaka, I have another theory to present. I think there's a coup within the dynasty. Otherwise, it took almost 3 days. Until now, they have not filed a case in the court. They say 172, probably 170 pages in Gujarati. But it means they don't have 170 workers in Gujarat who could have translated that in hours' time. But for Pawan Khera, they can go and knock the doors of the Parliament, Supreme Court, and get an emergent hearing. But here, no one has approached the court. So they can say whatever they have to say. The fact is they have to abide by the rule of law, and rule of law say that moment the judgment comes, the person loses the membership of the parliament or whichever house he belongs to, whether it is assembly or the parliament.
Okay.
And it's not the first case. There are 32 people who lost their membership of whatever domain they belong to, whether the assembly or the parliament. And just as recent as Azam Khan lost his membership also. But that time no one made such a hue and cry that, oh, this is all being planned or this is all being executed as per probably some direction of the government. I mean, it means you are challenging the authority of the courts. And that's our concern is that Dinesh says it's my way or highway. Either courts give order as per me, or I mean they have just recently held a press conference even on Supreme Court. They said we don't have faith in Supreme Court also. Jairam Ramesh 4 or 5 days back said that we don't have faith in Supreme Court also.
So let me ask M.K. Vishnu Prasad of the Congress, what explains, sir?
Give me another 5 seconds.
Let's open this up to others also. Mr. Vishnu Prasad, what explains?
5 seconds.
What explains? RP Saab, I'm coming back to you. I'm coming back to you. What explains the fact that it's been 4 days and like Mr. RP Singh said, Congress, Mr. Rahul Gandhi's lawyers have not moved an appeal. They have not asked for a stay on his conviction. The BJP is saying that if you could rush to the Supreme Court in a matter of 2 hours for Pawan Khera, surely you can do more than that for the leader of your party, Mr. Rahul Gandhi. Is there a thinking within the Congress party that politically and optics-wise, it might be better if Mr. Gandhi goes to jail for this?
See, first of all, I would like to say one thing. My beloved friend from BJP is showing some crocodile tears by saying that it's almost 4 days and there is a problem within the dynasty and all those things. These are all absolute nonsense. When there is a provision for 30 days, there is a legal team which is taking care of these legal procedures. So let us not get deep into that, and they will take good care of it. And first of all, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, our leader, is not disqualified based on any scam or any looting the money and running away from the country. He is disqualified on one particular case called defamation case. Maybe 32 people were disqualified, but on what grounds? Only 2 people till now, because it is a law of 1860, this defamation case, and only he is the second person, and this is the maximum punishment for this defamation case, 2 years. And this is a minimum requirement for any person to be disqualified from member of parliament or legislative assembly. So it is very clear that Modi is very, very scared of Rahul Gandhi, and he cannot answer any of his questions in the parliament, in the Lok Sabha.
Mr. Vishnu
and
Prasad,
in future also,
can I ask one interjectory,
in case if he is allowed to continue further.
One interjectory question, and that is the BJP is saying, A, this was a court order. The government has nothing to do with the court order.
Yes.
And B, the disqualification was issued by the Lok Sabha Secretariat, which comes under the Speaker's office. Again, that's an independent institution that doesn't come under the government. How do you respond to them when they say that?
Yeah. See, first of all, the incident happened in 2019 in Kolar, that is in Karnataka. And our leader stays in Delhi. But the case is taken in Surat, that is Gujarat. See the irony, the jurisdiction first has to be defined properly. And before taking up the case, the magistrate has to get a report from the investigating police officer and then proceed. But unfortunately, none of these things happened. In 2021, after 2 years of filing the case, my leader went in person and given a submission. And after that, in 2022, again he is called for, which the judge denied, that unnecessary harassment should not happen in this case. And in a rush, the complainant, ironically, the complainant in the history, the complainant himself goes to the appellate authority and gets a stay for his own complaint. Where it will happen. And after 1 year, last month, hurriedly he vacated the stay, and within a week or 10 days, we are getting this judgment.
Okay.
So it is
let me ask Professor Shogata Roy of the TMC. Okay. With your permission, let me go to Professor Shogata Roy of the TMC. We have seen, at least in the last 3 or 4 days since this verdict came, and then subsequently Mr. Gandhi's disqualification from the Lok Sabha, all opposition parties, including yours, sir, sort of rallying around, and your leaders put out statements. You were part of the protest today, the black shirt protest, so on and so forth. Will this opposition unity that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 days last? or how long will it last, or will this sort of wither away as you progress to further more difficult issues that the opposition will have to sort of confront? Because many are saying that this newfound unity may not last beyond a few days or weeks.
Mr. Jacob, I have no crystal ball. I cannot predict the future. Trinamool Congress is totally opposed to the BJP. But we have been showing our opposition in our own way. We did not join the other opposition parties in protesting in Parliament. We had not attended the meetings called by Mr. Kharge as opposition leader. But we had a separate program to demand arrest of Adani. We have not supported the demand for JPC. We wanted a Supreme Court monitored
Probe.
inquiry. But when Rahul Gandhi's conviction came, followed by his hurried, unseemly hurry in disqualifying him from Lok Sabha, our leader Mamata Banerjee was the first to react and protest. Mamata Banerjee has always protested whenever democratic values have been trampled upon. And what Mamata Banerjee and Abhishek said, that this is the nadir of democracy, lowest point of democracy, when just for making a speech in some faraway place, leader of a party is disqualified. So now, so far, we joined the meeting at Mr. Kharge's place. We joined the joint press conference today. This is one step. And we can only say that one step at a time. We should not jump the gun.
Okay.
We should not be in a hurry whether this is full preparation for 2024. When issues come, we shall protest in our own way. And in many cases, our protest will be jointly with other parties.
Opposition parties. Okay.
Let us see what happens in future.
Yeah. Let me ask Ratan Sharda, both the Uddhav Thackeray faction of the Shiv Sena as well as, of course, the BJP and the Shinde faction of the Shiv Sena in Mumbai, where you are in, they have now picked up something that Rahul Gandhi said on Saturday at his press conference, कि मेरा नाम सावरकर नहीं है, मैं माफ़ी नहीं मांगूंगा, मेरा नाम गांधी है. Has this now become the issue that the BJP will focus on? Because it seemed like, at least I was asking Professor Shogata Roy, the disqualification of Mr. Gandhi had become such a big story that even TMC, BRS, AAP buried their temporary differences with the opposition to rally around Rahul Gandhi for this issue. But is the BJP hoping that this, what he said on Savarkar, will become the focal point now?
Well, Zaka, first of all, Shiv Sena has no locus standi to speak for Savarkar because they lost their, authority on this issue when they kept quietly working with Congress when Congress was insulting Savarkar. Coming to other parties, if the other parties are willing to offer some some issue on the platter very foolishly, then why would not BJP use it? Very rightly so. This entire debate being turned into a shallow kind of debate. Somebody gets disqualified for insulting some caste. It was not a political slur, it was a caste slur, which is not allowed. So he makes a caste slur, then tries to turn into Savarkar versus Rahul Gandhi. How can be somebody so stupid? Because this, I do not understand every shallow debate. If you bring in Savarkar, the person who laid down his life, the complete life for the nation, for some shallow political ends, who is this wise person actually, advising this person? Because this is something that nobody will agree to, that you make a caste slur, you are disqualified, you are thrown out of Lok Sabha because as per the law, that is what it is, and you start calling out Savarkar. So GNO kind of mindset is definitely going to hurt Congress.
No, but do you believe that this is a minor issue which is being flagged up because the BJP is finding it difficult to respond to the opposition? It's not just the Congress, but the rest of the opposition also that's seemingly rallying around Rahul Gandhi.
No, but when, see, first of all, nobody is supporting Rahul very clearly. He's isolated. Opposition party is not coming to the support.
Congress person says 100, that why case was put up in a certain place, but does he know that there are hundreds of cases put up all India? Because today no more it is a world of reality, is a world of virtual reality. What I speak on CNN can be challenged by anybody in Assam.
Yeah.
To say that in some remote place somebody made a statement, so a citizen of the remote place, some lesser human beings, can't they don't they understand what this person is saying? So this very poor defense of Congress is so galling that they should not actually make any excuse. Easiest way was to apologize to the community and move on. But by creating some kind of martyrdom for something very foolish that he did on public platform is something that no opposition will support. And this
Okay,
isolation of Rahul
let's
Gandhi
see how
is
this
going to
plays
hurt.
out legally for Mr. Gandhi and what his his lawyers are advising him to do or not to do. But let me ask politically, Sanjay Kumar, the Lok Sabha elections are barely a year away. Do you think that this issue has the legs to A, bring the opposition together in a way that they unite all through to the Lok Sabha next year? And more importantly, is this issue an issue that is going to cut ice with the people of India? Because Mr. Gandhi has been saying this here in India through Bharat Jodo, outside in UK as well, that there is a democratic backslide happening in India, that democracy is dying. But are people, buying that narrative?
Zaka, at the moment, the divide is so deep between what we call pro-Modi, anti-Modi, that this is the judgment which has come up, the punishment which has been given to Rahul Gandhi. On that, and if people look at the sequence of events, what has happened ever since Rahul Gandhi has asked this question in the parliament about Adani. So even the strong supporters of BJP, some of them may have some issues. They might smile and they might say, yes, now things are being put in place, etc. Or they might even say, this is a little harsh on Rahul Gandhi, but that doesn't mean that he is gathering so much of sympathy that the BJP supporters are overnight going to tilt their vote in favor of Congress. So yes, whatever is happening may have helped in getting some sympathy. Some sympathy is too strong a word, but I'm unable to figure out an appropriate word.
But you certainly don't think that this is going back to 1978 when Mrs. Gandhi was arrested and the mood of the nation changed?
No, it's very, very far away from, if we start comparing it with what was happening in 1977, far away from that situation. So I don't see Congress gaining electorally in a such a big way that it can tilt the scales in favor of Congress. That's nothing of that kind is happening.
Even if, let's say, I don't want to give, extend too much to something that was suggested on the show, but if, let's say, Mr. Gandhi and his lawyers, for whatever reason, choose not to appeal against this conviction or seek a stay on this conviction, and he has to go to jail, even then you don't think, because the conventional wisdom in India is any politician who goes to jail comes back as a much bigger name and face.
No, you're right, Zaka. There's a conventional wisdom that if you go to jail, you become a much bigger leader.
Yeah.
Will happen in the case of Rahul Gandhi. I am not sure whether this will happen in the case of Rahul Gandhi. Because one simple fact, because he has an opportunity to appeal in the higher court, and if he doesn't go to the higher court, people will still have questions. He had a chance to appeal to the court. He had a chance. If he has not done that, there is something, certainly is playing politics around that. So I am not, so I can say that his going to jail is not going to, revive the fortunes of the Congress in a big way. That's not going to help Congress either.
RP Singh, I want to come back to something that the Congress spokespersons have been saying, and Rahul Gandhi also said this in his press conference on Saturday, that, there's a certain curiosity in this case that he says 7th of February he makes the speech in Parliament against Mr. Adani. Within a week of that, this case, which was stayed by the Gujarat High Court, the stay is lifted, and within a month and a half after that, we have a verdict. They are claiming, the Congress is claiming, that all of this is interconnected, and the reason that they want that you want Rahul Gandhi out, that you want him disqualified, is because he is daring to make another speech on Adani in Parliament, and you don't want to hear that.
Zaka, I was just going through the Google, and then 2nd of Feb, Mr. Kharge is on record saying, and if you want, I'll send you the press clipping also. is on record saying that they want investigation to be done by Supreme Court, led a team of experts, or JPC. This slash between the two. Now, it's under the Supreme Court, and then as per their wish, and as someone has approached us from the Congress party, the lady is a member parliament of the Congress. Now, on that basis, Congress member parliament's intervention, there is an investigation happening. Why shall anyone be scared of it? I mean, let the investigation happen. दूध का दूध पानी का पानी हो जाएगा. But as I said, problem is the dynasty. Dynasty doesn't believe in courts. And then there's a procedure. They had all that time to get the case quashed. They could have gone to the higher court, get the case quashed, saying that this is not valid and this is not appropriate, but they didn't do so. And also, I'm shocked that gentleman is saying he gave a speech in some other place, and he stays in Delhi and the case has been filed. Well, if I'm hurt, I stay in Delhi, and then someone speaks against my community in any place of the country, I'll file a case where I stay. And he has virtually ridiculed the OBCs, Modi OBCs, by saying what he said. I mean, he said "Sare chor hai."
But RP saying on the question that the Congress is asking for a defamation case to disqualify a member of parliament, and today I believe a notice has been sent to him to vacate his bungalow. Yes. I mean, does that make sense? I mean, it's not a corruption case, it's not a murder case, it is a defamation case. I can't think of a previous instance where a defamation case, a member of parliament has lost his or her seat. That's what the Congress is asking.
Zaka, if I'm hurt emotionally, that's much bigger crime than anything else. If you are questioning my complete existence, and then you are putting a question mark on the existence of the complete community, because you happen to be a dentist and you think you can do with it. So that's a much bigger crime than anything else as for me.
Okay.
I mean, people commit murders because of this. I mean, I'm not saying that one should do that, but once he is hurt or one person is hurt because of he's been castigized by someone. I remember Mr. Rahul Gandhi is on record saying that he went to some person's house and his sister was probably being abused, and he said, मेरे हाथ में चक्कू होता तो मैं चक्कू आपके पास चक्कू था तो why didn't you go and kill the man? I mean, that's what it is. I mean, so instead of physically harming, the person has gone to the court and seek relief and seek the justice there.
So MK Vishnu Prasad, you know, again, it comes back to, sir, was Mr. Gandhi given bad legal advice? Normally what happens in defamation cases is the lawyers move to quash proceedings, either on jurisdictional reasons or any other reason, or even if the matter goes into trial, what they do is go to the court and clarify, saying that, look, I didn't intend, or my comments were not intended to cause hurt to an entire community. I was referring to a particular person, a specific person, in this case, the Prime Minister. Neither was that done by Mr. Gandhi.
I would like to clarify here, my leader, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, spoke about Lalit Modi, Nirav Modi and Narendra Modi. He didn't mention anywhere about the community.
I'll appreciate, please rerun that tape.
A defamation case has to be filed. Defamation case has to be filed if a defamation against an individual.
Please rerun that tape, rerun the video.
So here, he said,
one second, Sare Modi chor hai.
Let him finish, sir.
Clear thing. There is one thing very common between these three people, between these three persons, one thing is common is Modi. So there is nothing, and moreover, where is this OBC? Because Lalit Modi and Nirav Modi are not OBCs. So where this OBC question is coming? I am really surprised by the way my friend is asking. So BJP at every given point of time, they are seeing an opportunity where to divert from JPC. Joint Parliamentary Committee, which has to be convened, is our prayer. For what? For the poor people, the people who invested in LIC and SBI, from where the money has gone to Adani, and the Hindenburg report clearly said that misuse of funds has taken place.
No,
so,
but Mr. Vishnu Prasad, there is a Supreme Court monitored.
Asking JPC is not hanging.
There is a Supreme Court.
One second, sir. Kindly let me complete, sir.
There is a Supreme Court monitored probe. Are you not happy with that?
What is wrong in convening a JPC, sir? Sir, what is wrong in convening a JPC? In fact, the number of representation from the ruling party will be more.
Okay.
But if only this government has listened and convened a JPC, which our leader asked for the poor people, the price rise, and for the poor people, when our leader is questioned, and for which his membership has been disqualified, is a very clear-cut demonstration of murdering a democracy.
Okay.
And that is what our leader says right from the beginning.
No, he still has an opportunity to challenge this in a higher courts, get a stay on his conviction,
Yes,
and of
yes.
course, if he
See,
does
those
that,
things our
he
legal
can
team
also,
will take good care of it
give me a
and
moment. He
let
can also go
our-
back to the Lok Sabha Secretariat and ask for a quashing of his disqualification. But be that as it may, let me go back to Professor Shogata Roy. It comes back to the moot question, Professor Shogata Roy. Does this episode, and I'm please help us understand, because the man on the street seems to have, be taking this in his or her stride. This is not comparable to, what we saw in 75 or in 77. The point that's being asked is this such a big case, such a big issue that demonstrates or illustrates what the opposition has been claiming, that there is a democratic backslide in India? I mean, we just had elections in 3 northeastern states. Each of those states there was more than 80% voting voter turnout. So where is this democratic backslide?
Yes. Democratic backslide is in the disqualifying of Rahul Gandhi from the Lok Sabha. People are asking the question, if just for making a speech few years ago in a faraway place, one is dismissed from the Lok Sabha, then where is democracy in this country? A, the case was frivolous. 2, the judgment is not serious. And 3, the decision by the Lok Sabha Secretariat has been given in a hurry. They are following it up with asking Rahul Gandhi to vacate his government bungalow.
Yeah.
All this shows that there is something in the mind of the government and the ruling party that they must get rid of Rahul Gandhi. And this has happened when, after Rahul Gandhi made a speech in Lok Sabha showing the connection between Modi and Adani.
No, but Professor Roy, I'm sorry I'm interrupting.
Government
but
of the day,
doesn't it suit?
Just a moment.
Sir, doesn't it suit the ruling party and the government to keep Rahul Gandhi there? Because if he goes to jail, or all this rallying that opposition is rallying around Rahul Gandhi, why should the government make him bigger than what he is?
Because it's a vengeful party. You must understand that not all steps taken by BJP are logical. They are vengeful, they have an anger. Their anger is, how dare you connect our great leader Narendra Modi to one Gautam Adani. They are taking out their anger. So even if it is not politically propitious, there is no doubt that this has given a big fillip to Rahul Gandhi.
Okay.
It has created a sympathy wave for him. And it has created a situation for opposition unity. The ruling party will have to pay the price for their vengeful action. In this country, people have never pardoned vengeful, revengeful, vindictive action.
Okay.
And this disqualification of Rahul Gandhi, followed by other steps against him, has been seen as vengeful.
Okay,
and
so
is
Ratan
given
Chadha,
to-
this is
given a
vengeful
handle to
politics, this is
Rahul
vindictive
Gandhi.
politics.
This is the
and
foolishness.
People of this country have never forgiven vindictive politics. That's the claim by Professor Shogata Roy of the TMC. Ratan Chadha.
Like Saugata Roy forgets that disqualification has happened because of a law which has been passed by the Supreme Court. It is the same law which was to be amended by an ordinance by Manmohan Singh to save their friends in the opposition, which was toned down by Rahul Gandhi. So he tears down an ordinance to save the criminal politicians. It is a Supreme Court order.
So if
Now,
Rahul
to say that
Gandhi made a
BJP is being
mistake
vengeful,
14 years
my
ago,
dear Saugataji, I didn't disturb you, a very senior person, please. My simple question is it nice per law of the
no,
Supreme
you
Court?
can disturb me.
How
You
can you call it a
threatening me.
government vengeance?
You cannot
Hey,
do
how can you
anything
call
to
it-
me.
Mr.
You
Saugata
do not
Roy,
threaten
you're
me.
too senior. I don't have to shout with you, please. You had your say respectfully. You got all
No,
the
no,
time
but
you
I
wanted in
am
the world.
saying,
Please,
I-
please.
Sir,
Please.
one at a
I-
time.
I
Let him
don't
finish.
think so much.
Let him finish. He didn't interrupt when you spoke, so let him finish. Yeah. Ratan Sharda.
My simple submission, which is continuously, interrupting me, it is as per Supreme Court law. It is as per their own Congress lawyers, like Abhishek had clearly said that as per law he will be disqualified. So now if he had some gall, either he should have gone to appeal, or he should have resigned from the very respectfully gone out and carried on the crusade against Adani, who stopped him. And as far as Adani is concerned, there is a SIT under Supreme Court, but they want JPC because JP is nothing but political grandstanding. In last debate, I talked of 4 JPCs which did not give any result because it is highly partisan. Nobody wants to come a unanimous decision. It's a grandstanding, nothing else. It's waste of money and time because none of the JPC ever bore fruit. Now, this people who are talking of, poor Rahul Gandhi, etc., they have chosen the wrong topic. Had they stuck to Adani, I could understand. But calling him to be a sacrificial lamb, talking to somebody who has been persecuted by the government because he called a caste certain slur, I think Congress doesn't understand. They have very wrong advisors again saying it.
I'll give Professor Sanjay Kumar the final word. Again, comparisons are being made to 1989, how you had a fairly, I mean, at least Lok Sabha majority-wise,
No
one
way.
of the largest majority governments, and then there was this entire coalition of opposition parties under VP Singh. It was a emotionally resonant issue, whether it was Mandal, and then of course there was this whole Bofors corruption. Do you believe that the opposition today is that wishful thinking that this is a repeat of 1989 or could be a repeat of 1989?
Difficult to imagine that it's going to be a repeat of 1989. We have already mentioned in 1989 it was Vishwanath Pratap Singh. Today there is no Vishwanath Pratap Singh. His credibility among the people, he had a tall stature. His credibility as an honest politician was established. So that is how he could rally around leaders from various opposition parties, whether it was from the left or the right, when there was a need to seek support to form the government. And remember, it was Bofors, and Bofors was related to country's national security. That there has been kickbacks, and it is what has happened is that the ruling Congress government has compromised the national security. So if all those things were, put in a very systematic manner to the people of the country at that time, voters of that country, and voters believe, and that is how what happened in '89. We all saw that a very government with a massive majority was thrown out of power. I don't think we are even close to what was happening in 1989. We don't have a VP Singh. There are opposition leaders whose credibility is at stake. We don't have anyone who can stand over and above all these leaders who could be seen as an honest politician, around which all leaders of all other opposition parties can rally behind. So difficult. I think 89 moment is not going to be in 2024.
Will it be 77-78? Will it be 89-90? Or will 2024 be a repeat of what we saw in 14 and in 19? That, I guess, only the people of India will answer. For now, though, it has given a much-needed fillip to Rahul Gandhi. Whether or not that makes any electoral difference, like I said, it's something that we will only know on the road to 2024. I'm going to take a quick break. Thank all our guests. On the other side, it's an exclusive interview with former National Security Advisor of the Trump regime in the United States. Ambassador John Bolton will be joining me. I'll ask him about whether a new Cold War is brewing, what he makes of this recent meeting between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, how he sees the Russia-Ukraine war ending, and of course, what expectations he has of India's G20 president. All that and more in an exclusive conversation right on the other side.
And in fact, the celebration is a Kirtan celebration. So whenever one Gurudwara is built, then it is in a way an inauguration of Gurudwara. So large number of devotees have gathered at the Gurudwara, and in fact, some of the groups who have been participating in the India protest, who have been raising voice against India, have also taken part. And it's very clearly visible in the footages that we have, where some people are raising the flags in a religious celebration, in a religious parade. So, and that this is perhaps the reason that the extra deployment has been made by the sheriff's office. Those 100 of law enforcement officers are there on ground to handle the situation.
We're learning about a shootout which has taken place in the open at a Sikh temple in Sacramento, California. We're also learning that 2 people have been shot at the temple in Sacramento. The sheriff's office is searching for the suspect. We're also learning that 1 shooter is still absconding at this moment. Now, when it comes to law enforcement, there are hundreds of officers on the ground, and the Sikh community was celebrating, and this is also an important point which is coming to light, where Khalistani flags could also be seen at the celebrations. Now, when this shootout took place, 2 victims were taken to a nearby hospital. The person absconding is believed to be an East Indian man in his 20s and 30s, and the police are trying to identify the reason due to which the fight has broken out. We're crossing over to CNN News 18, Siddhant Mishra. Siddhant, tell us more about this horrific shooting.
Well, that's right. So more than 100 of law enforcement officers are right now on the ground, and we have been told that heated argument broke out between 3 people from the Sikh community in Sacramento, where this new Gurudwara has been built. The celebration of Sikh community was taking place, and in fact, several anti-India Khalistan Khalistani supporters, those groups have also participated in this celebration. And after the heated argument, 1 person opened fire on at the other person, and then the 3rd person standing opened fire at the first shooter. And after which, the chaos could be seen right outside the Gurudwara. 2 of these people have been injured. 2 of the injured have been shifted to the hospital. So 1 person is still at large and responding. The police force is looking for that person. We have been told that this person is an East Indian man in his 20s and 30s. Cops are still trying to identify the reason due to which this fight broke out. Now, these 3 individuals, these 3 people belonging to Sikh community have been raising voice against India, have been protesting against India on the issue of Amritpal Singh, and this is perhaps the reason that even cops are taking this case very seriously. And even the celebration which was organized at the Gurdwara, one could easily see Khalistan flags and Khalistan slogans being raised in this celebration at a Gurdwara in Sacramento. So the situation is tense but peaceful. More than 100 of law enforcement officers are on ground.
Absolutely. Siddhant, let's also bring the focus back to the victims right now. We know about 2. Is there any update on that number, or is that the correct number? And can you tell us more about their condition?
Well, these 2 individuals are stable. They are treated in the hospital. But what is more important for investigators right now is their background. Since these 3 individuals do belong to the Khalistani groups, they have been raising voice against India. They have been speaking against India. So this makes this entire case very special for the investigators, for the detectives, and this is perhaps the reason that they are leaving no stone unturned to find out the 1 person absconding, who is an East Indian man. But the sheriff office of Sacramento is still absconding, so the cops have started the manhunt. The statements of the other 2 injured are also being recorded. The statements.
It's been over a year since the Russia-Ukraine war, and there doesn't seem to be any end in sight, certainly not in the foreseeable future. And neither side, neither Ukraine, backed by the United States and its European partners, nor Russia, which firmly seems to have China on its side now, want to seem to move in the direction of peace or some kind of a settlement, if not a ceasefire to start with. So how does this Russia-Ukraine war, what is going to be the trajectory over the next few months? Are we expecting an even bloodier clash before we can expect some kind of negotiated settlement, if you will? Also, the recent meeting between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin of Russia, is this now firmly positioning Russia and China in one camp and the US and its NATO partners in the other camp? Where does that leave neutral countries like India? Joining me now for an extensive conversation on all of these issues, the geopolitics, the shifting sands, as it were, after the Russia-Ukraine war, is now former National Security Advisor and former Ambassador of the United States, John Bolton. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bolton, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. First things first, we had this pretty momentous meeting last week between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. It was the first visit that Xi Jinping undertook after his unprecedented third term. What is your reading of the signals emerging out of this meeting? Are Russia and China now becoming a new bloc of countries in opposition to the US and its partners, whether it is NATO partners, other European partners, democratic countries? Are we now seeing two firmly entrenched camps in a way that this could be the start of a new Cold War?
Well, I wouldn't call it a new Cold War. I think all these things turn out to be different over time, but I don't doubt that that they have effectively established a Beijing-Moscow axis. The rhetoric that they used about the nature of their partnership, the no limits point they've made before, the fact that they basically say they reject the Western concept of a rules-based international order. They want to go back to traditional international norms. And perhaps most significantly, Xi Jinping's comment as he was leaving Moscow that we haven't seen anything like this in 100 years. Now, in terms of actual concrete results, there's really less than one might have expected, but I don't think that you can miss the symbolism of how this is being put together. And I think the reality in Ukraine, we'll see the importance of increased Chinese backing to Russia. And I think the Chinese will expect the same if they look at Taiwan, if they look at the South China Sea, if they look at their long land borders on the continent of Asia. And I think it's up to all of us confronted with this really tectonic plate shifting that's going on, that we have to look at this as an emerging bloc and deal with it accordingly. And so a lot of things that for decades before were considered regional issues, you've got issues in Europe, you've got issues in South Asia, you've got issues in East Asia. This is all part of a global pattern now.
So how does the United States, its democratic partners, its NATO allies, and of course neutral countries like India, how do we deal with this emerging axis, as you put it, between Beijing and Moscow? And as you said, today it's the war over Ukraine. Tomorrow, if there were to be a conflict with Taiwan, Russia would be expected to take China's side. There is already an ongoing conflict between India and China in our northern borders. How do these countries now deal with this emerging axis between Russia and China?
Well, I think there are developments in the Indo-Pacific already. The Quad, Japan, India, Australia, and the United States, I think, is an important development. I think that's going to expand in the scope of its activities. I think dealing with India specifically, it's an important moment. The history of India's relations with Russia, I think we know well, but obviously China is now a principal adversary for India. So, as the saying in America goes, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. I think there's going to have to be a choice. I think it's going to be a difficult choice for India, but I think its overall national security has to be to preserve its capability to resist the pressure from China and their allies, whoever that is, including the Russians.
So let's talk about this war. It's been over a year since it started, and seemingly there is no end, at least in the foreseeable future. Neither side, neither Ukraine nor Russia, seems to even want to move towards a ceasefire or some kind of negotiated settlement. Since Ukraine depends so much on the US and its European partners, why aren't any of those countries urging Ukraine or pushing Ukraine and perhaps even Russia to move towards a ceasefire? It seems like the US and its allies are simply fueling this almost never-ending pipeline of weapons to Ukraine. Thereby, there's no incentive for them to stop.
Well, when your country's been invaded, you're not terribly interested in a ceasefire that leaves the invader in control of 20% of the country. I think part of the problem here is the NATO alliance behaved very poorly in 2014 when the Russians made their first invasion of Ukraine, and it has complicated dealing with the second invasion. But I think we should articulate what our goals are. And the stated position of every NATO member is full restoration of Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. Now, if we mean that, that means pushing the Russians out. And I think this was pretty clearly stated by the Prime Minister of Finland some months ago. She was asked, well, what's the outcome here? How does this end in Ukraine? And she said, how does it end? It ends when the Russian troops leave. And I think that's the objective we should be pushing for. And I don't think we've done a very effective job at that.
If the conflict were to be frozen as it stands today, as you said, Russia controls anywhere between 15 to 20% of Ukraine, territory which it did not have before the war began. And yet, if you were to move in the direction of peace and some kind of a negotiated settlement of this conflict, you have to give Vladimir Putin an off-ramp. What may that off-ramp look like? Because after having launched this war, after having committed so many troops and weapons, and after having lost so many troops, it's not like he's going to decide one day to call the troops back home. That's not going to happen.
Well, I don't see that there is an off ramp. I don't see the Ukrainians are prepared to do anything that would concede any territory to Russia. And of course, they're the ones who have suffered civilian casualties. They've seen their civilian infrastructure attacked by the Russians. But they're not in any mood to make any concessions. And so far, Putin isn't in any mood to make concessions either. So I think the default position is the war is likely to continue. And that leads to the question whether Putin is able to split the NATO alliance and win politically what his forces have manifestly not been able to win on the battlefield. From the U.S. point of view, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said 10 months ago, I think he said, the Russians are feeding their army into a wood chipper. And as long as the Russians continue to do that, that's certainly not anything we're going to get in the way of.
I want to talk a little bit about, something else that's happened in recent weeks, something profound and pretty significant in the diplomatic world, which is this deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. We're given to understand it was brokered by China. Diplomats were stuck in a room for 4 days and thrashed that deal out. Now there are reports of Syria and Saudi Arabia are looking at normalizing ties as well. In a part of the world where the U.S. was and continues to be the major power player or power broker, if you will, do you believe that China is moving in to fill the void that the U.S. seems to have left behind? I mean, is the U.S. now too consumed by what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Taiwan, that it's forced to sort of take its eye off the ball, as it were, particularly in areas like the Middle East, where it was and continues to be the biggest power player?
Well, it's not clear how much substance there is in any of these deals. I mean, in the case of Iran, Saudi Arabia, the Iranians have committed to ceasing their supply of drones and missiles to the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Now, we'll see if that happens, and if it does, then perhaps the Saudis resume diplomatic relations. But it's not clear exactly how far it goes. I think the reality in the Gulf Arab states is that they're very frustrated with the Biden administration. After all, particularly in the case of the Saudis, the Biden team came in and said, number one, we're going to put you out of business because you produce these terrible hydrocarbons, oil and gas, and we don't want to use oil and gas. Number two, we don't like the Khashoggi assassination, and you heard Biden's rhetoric during the campaign, really calling the Saudis outlaws. And then number three, they said, we're determined to go back into the Iran nuclear deal, which the Saudis, the Emiratis, and others think represents an existential threat for them. So it's no wonder that many in the Arab world are worried about the staying power, the resolve of the United States. I think the Israelis are very worried about it too. And it's I don't think the Biden administration is going to change its policies. We'll have to see what happens in next year's election. And I think for the Arab countries, that's a long time to wait.
All right. We'll come to the election in a moment, but I want to talk a little bit about India. Of course, India and the U.S. partnership has intensified leaps and bounds in the last 20 years or so. But during the course of this Russia-Ukraine war, it's not like India has snapped its ties with Russia. India has not condemned Russia's invasion in any of the votes that happened at the UNGA or at the United Nations Security Council. In fact, from less than 1% of Russian oil at the start of this war, today Russia is India's largest supplier of oil. More than a quarter of all oil that India imports is seemingly coming from Russia. How would you see India's sort of balancing act, if you will, over the last year or so since this war began?
Yeah. Well, obviously, the ties with Russia are historic in nature, going back decades and decades. That's complicates any unwinding of that relationship. But when you see the country that you have these ties with getting closer and closer to China, and more under China's sway, I think it should alert, certainly on the military side, the leaders who look at the danger that potentially India's principal adversary is being told about the weapon systems that it's also selling to India. So I think there's a real risk there, and I think it's a question maybe for people across India to debate when you see unprovoked aggression by Russia against Ukraine, which endangers peace and security on the entire European continent. Is that something you're content to see elsewhere as well? From the U.S. point of view, the answer to that's no. We have close friends and allies in Europe. Ukraine's not a member of NATO, but it critically borders a number of them and worries others like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. The Russian invasion was enough to convince Finland and Sweden, two of the longest neutral countries, longest lasting neutral positions in international politics, to give up decades of neutrality to join the NATO alliance. So I think the Russian invasion ought to provoke a wider debate about whether that behavior is acceptable, particularly given that China is looking at doing potentially something similar in Taiwan, in the South China Sea, who knows where else.
India is, of course, the host of the G20 summit this year, but after the Bali summit last year, there are 2 paragraphs on the Ukraine war which Russia and China have opposed. They were not able to get a joint statement at the foreign ministers' meeting or at the finance ministers' meeting. If at the leaders' summit in September, India were not able to get out a joint communique, would that mean that the summit itself was a failure?
Well, I don't think it can be blamed on India if there's no joint declaration. This is due to circumstances, geostrategic circumstances, really around the world. And I would say, honestly, the fascination that diplomats from countries all over the world have with these declarations is misplaced. Ultimately, they don't mean that much. I mean, just as an example, this is this chairing of the G20 by India. Who remembers what the G20 declaration 10 years ago was? Can anybody even name the subjects that it dealt with? I was when I was UN ambassador, I once heard the ambassador from a European country say, with respect to some crisis, the Security Council must be heard. And I remember thinking to myself, why must it be heard? Nobody's going to pay any attention to it. So if there is a joint declaration, I'm sure that'll be fine. If there's no joint declaration, think of the trees we'll be saving and not cut down to print it.
Okay. Last couple of questions. Last September, there was this Nord Stream pipeline explosion. It's the biggest global mystery of our times. You must have seen Seymour Hersh's report claiming that it was the U.S. President who ordered the hit. That was, of course, vehemently denied by the White House. Who do you think was behind
it? Well, the evidence that's been accumulated has not been made public, and we've heard different stories. I mean, I can say it's not the United States for 2 definitive reasons. Number one, the Biden administration wouldn't have had the spine to do it in the first place. And second, we couldn't keep it a secret even if we had. So I think Seymour Hersh is writing more science fiction, and I'm sure it's good for magazine sales. The evidence that has been leaked about a German investigation pointing to a pro-Ukraine group. Very interestingly, Vladimir Putin said only a state actor could have carried out the operation. But if it did turn out to be Ukraine, that wouldn't bother me at all. Their country's been invaded. Are they not allowed to defend themselves?
All right. One final word, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on your former boss, Donald Trump, trying to run for office again. Do you reckon he'll be able to win the Republican Party nomination? And why are Republicans still sort of rallying around him despite all the criminal charges, the potential indictments against him?
Well, I think some are rallying around, but I think his base within the party has declined. I think people are tired of this, tired of the drama, and they say, "Is there nobody else in the party that we can nominate who isn't being accused of paying hush money to a porn star to cover up an extramarital affair and then cooking his company's books to hide it?" There must be other Republicans who believe in our principles, who have better character, that are more likely to win the election. I still think it's unlikely that Trump will get the Republican nomination. I think if he is nominated, he will lose for sure. And so, since I want to avoid a second Biden term, I think it's very important we find another candidate for the Republicans to nominate.
All right, Ambassador John Bolton, as always, a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for your time and your insights. That was Ambassador John Bolton of the U.S. With his thoughts from the Russia-Ukraine war to the emerging bonhomie between China and Russia, and of course, what countries like India should do. That's a wrap. Thanks very much for your time.
So, and that this is perhaps the reason that the extra deployment has been made by the sheriff's office. Those 100 of law enforcement officers are there on ground to handle the situation.
We're learning about a shootout which has taken place in the open at a Sikh temple in Sacramento, California. We're also learning that 2 people have been shot at the temple in Sacramento. The sheriff's office is searching for the suspect. We're also learning that one shooter is still absconding at this moment. Now, when it comes to law